for accepting the role of leading. Leadership, really, if I may to define it, is the capacity to influence people to do something which is beneficial to them. And leadership is not a sprint, but leadership is a relay race. Ni mbio za kupokezana vijiti. Mtu mmoja anakimbia and then pass the baton to the other person, passing the baton to the next generation. So right now you have assumed responsibilities, and with much responsibility demands high level of leadership. You are now going to serve, and leadership, my dear brothers and sisters, is about service, serving the other person. And there will be challenges while you are serving, but with much commitment and sacrifices, you will be able to serve well as the outgoing leadership. The reason why we are having a day like today, it is because of the good leadership of the previous leaders, and they have done a very good job passing the baton to you. So in a very special way, my dear brothers and sisters whom you have assumed responsibilities today, I want to wish you the very best. Leadership is service. And I remember the quotation from one of the presidents of the United States of America. He once said, Kwamba, if your actions inspire other people to do more, to think more, and become more, then you are the leader. So we are expecting out of you to lead by examples, by putting the priorities of the people you are leading first than your own priorities. And what would you love people to say about you once you finish serving? Ndio tunasema begin with an end in mind. At the end of your leadership, at the end of your tenure, what would you love people to say about you? Watu waseme nini kuhusiana na wewe? When they talk about Tanzania scholars in India, wengine watasema, we have had many leaders in this association. We have had many leaders in this institution, but we have not seen the kind of leader you are. So what kind of a person will you now become after assuming this position of responsibility? Kwa hiyo uongozi unakuja na majukumu, and I hope you will be able to fulfill your duties. Connecting people, that's one of your biggest roles. Bringing unity in this family more than ever before. And you cannot bring people together without good leadership. Leading from the heart. Leading from the heart. It's very, very important. And then another thing that I would love to talk about to my brothers and sisters in India, I would love to speak to us generally. And I recognize in this gathering, we also have brothers and sisters from other countries. We have delegates and representatives from different countries. I've been listening to my brothers from Kenya, from Pakistan, and other parts of the world. And as diasporas, Tanzanian diaspora in India, we really have a huge role to play in shaping the leadership of our country. We are in India to learn, but also to observe. You can be doing the comparison as a citizen of Tanzania in India. And you can learn the best practices from India, and so that when you come back home, you can contribute to the economy, to the politics, and also to the well-being of your fellow Tanzanians. You have that role. If you read history, many countries have been built by diasporas. You are representing a very important part of our nation. You are very important community in our nation. Look, for example, countries like Israel. We all know that Israel, for many years, have been to different parts of the world, to the United States of America, the United Kingdom, in Germany, and other parts of the world. They went there for good or bad reason. And while they were there, they gathered a lot of information. They gathered a lot of knowledge. And once they decided to come back home in 1948, they came back home with knowledge, with experience, with exposure necessary to build their country. And Israel is not the only example. We have also China. Once they realized they needed technology, once they realized they needed the Western philosophy to take their country to the next level, they started to send their brilliant young men and women to different parts of the world to observe, but also to learn. They were sending their young men and women as soldiers, as ni kama wanajeshi, si tu kutuma watu kwenda kusoma, hapana, walikuwa wanatuma wanajeshi. They were sending soldiers outside to go and observe and to take technology by force, because it is the nature of things. The world is not willing to share technology. It's not willing to share technology, so technology has to be taken by force. So China used their smart men and women to go to the West. Wakaenda Amerikani, wakaenda Ulaya, and then while staying there, they were fulfilling the mission they were sent by their country to fulfill. Then they started to observe how the Americans were doing and how the Europeans were doing. And slowly by slowly, they were absorbing, they were taking this technology. And China is not only the country that went to that direction, but also Japan. We all remember what happened to Japan in 1940s. Second World War. Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they were bombed. And then because now their friends in America, they started to sympathize with them, and the world started to sympathize with them. Then Japan used that as an opportunity to send their best young men and women to America to go and take technology by force. So I remember there was a time they sent their young men and women to a company called IBM. And there they sent professors, they sent people who were good in drawing, and they sent cameramen and women, and also people who were very good in connecting dots. So they went there as a tour. So they were touring these big companies. But they had something at the back of their mind. They were not just touring, but they were there to conquer, to steal technology. Because the world is not willing to give you technology kiraisi raisi tu hivi. No, all technology is protected by copyrights and patent rights. You can't really have good education just like that. The real education people are not given. The real education, we have to take it by force. That's why, my dear brothers and sisters in India, there is a kind of education Indian people can give you out of their generosity. But also, there is another kind of education. Our friends from India, I don't think if they will be willing to give you that technology, that kind of education. So you have to observe, but also to educate yourself. You have a role to study within this classroom, within the university, but also you have another duty to learn beyond a university classroom. By observing, you go to the community, to the marketplaces, to different offices, and you observe. By doing that, you will be more than qualified. you will have 2 degrees when you come back home, or 3 degrees when you come back home. More than that one which they give you a certificate. We need that kind of education. So I expect while you are still in India, you will start asking yourself these questions. And of course, India is a great country. We are talking about a country with 1.4 billion people. Indians are more in terms of population than the entire continent of Africa. In Africa, we are 1.3 billion people. And Indians, they're 1.4 more. I think they are following after India. After China, the second leading in terms of population, these are Indians. And Indians have done an amazing work. When you talk about human science, they are doing very, very well. You talk about engineering, they are doing very, very well. Recently, we have seen the Indians have sent their satellite to the moon. But not only they have sent their satellite to the moon, but they have sent their satellite to the best part of the moon. Chayanjira, kuna satellite yao wanaiita Chayanjira 3, sijui inaitwa hiyo. Wameipeleka kule mwezini, unaambiwa. Wamewazidi mpaka wale waliopeleka vyombo vyao awali, wameipeleka ile sehemu unaambiwa muhimu sana, hao ndugu zetu wa India. So they are very educated. When it comes to education, they are educated. And then start asking yourself these questions. In every big city you go in the world, you will find Indians having shops and running businesses. This is the kind of education you need also to learn. How comes that when Indians, everywhere they go, they have a shop, they have a business, they are running hotels, hospitality industries, they are leading in these sectors. They are good lecturers. They are teaching different universities from across the world. Recently, I was in the United States of America around February this year. I went to the United States in Washington, D.C. I found some good Indians there. They are doing businesses in USA. And I also went to Berlin this year. And I ate in one of the Indian restaurants in Berlin. At the heart of Berlin, you cannot imagine, you find a very big restaurant of Indians. And I was asking myself, where can I find a restaurant of Tanzanians in the United States of America? Where can I find a restaurant of Tanzanians in Berlin? I wanted to eat ugali na mlenda na maziwa but I failed to find it. Nimekosa kabisa. Huku siwezi pata ugali dagaa huku, maana kwamba watu wetu bado kufika huku kufanya mambo aula. Kuna mwanamama fulani wa Kenya, wakati niko Washington, yeye alikuwa yuko Chicago, nadhani alikuwa anauza vitumbua na chapati somewhere in Chicago. A lady from Kenya selling something. But the point I'm trying to make here, you are in a very important country, in a very important community, that you need really to pay attention and to learn beyond the normal classroom sessions. And also when it comes to politics, India has shaped the leadership of the world. Haki ya nani nakwambia, you read the story of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. I have read the books of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere. And somewhere in his writings, he acknowledges that he has learned so much from Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi in 1940s, 1930s, he was the force for good. Through his principle of non-violence, he became the point for good. And those of Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, they learned from Mahatma Gandhi. Nelson Mandela learned from Mahatma Gandhi. Kwame Nkrumah learned from Mahatma Gandhi. So in many ways, India has shaped the leadership of the world. And there was a time also I read somewhere when Mwalimu was fighting for the independence of Tanganyika then, the independence of Tanzania. He used to go to UNO, United Nations Organization at that time, in Washington, D.C. And while he was there, he had an encounter with Nehru, Nehru was the Prime Minister of India at that point. And Mwalimu was somehow frustrated because things were difficult at that moment. And then while they were conversing, Mwalimu Nyerere with Nehru, the leader of India in Washington, D.C., Nehru told Mwalimu, and Mwalimu never forgot the advice of Nehru. And he told Mwalimu, take what you can get. And because Mwalimu was a philosopher and a historian and a teacher, he understood what Nehru was telling him. Kwamba chukua kile unachoweza kuchukua, usitake mambo yote kwa pupa. Don't do not want to get everything at par. You first of all take what you can get, and slowly by slowly, build yourself and mobilize yourself better to get even more. And then when you consider the uamuzi wa busara in Tabora, there were some Tanganyikans, they wanted to boycott the election in 1960s during the times of political struggle in Tanzania. They wanted to boycott. They did not want it to go into Kuratatu. Those of you who are following history keenly, but Mwalimu, by using the example of Nehru, take what you can get, he convinced his fellow Tanganyikan to accept to go for the election. And then, to cut the long story short, we succeeded. So India, in many ways, has shaped the leadership of the world. So you need really to observe, you need to be keen, and also when you talk about women's empowerment and women in leadership, of course you cannot forget the influence of Indira Gandhi, the woman who was the Prime Minister of India. And right now, as I'm speaking, India also has a female president. So there's so much to learn. There is no country on the planet Earth which has gotten many voters in democratic election than India. India is the biggest democratic country in the world. If democracy means free and fair election and people participating into voting, then India qualifies. 1.4 billion people. Electing a president is not a joke. So there's so much to learn from India, especially doing business and also how they conduct themselves. But also, in order for you to really be in a state of being in a sober way and allowing yourself to learn, especially if you are in that part of the world, you need also to look deep within your soul, because you are in a different community. I will also encourage you to consider yourself that you are part of the global community. And for this reason, do not isolate yourself from the centers of power. You might be in India sometimes and people show to you that you are in India, but you do not belong to India. Everywhere you go in the world, even in the US, in UK, you will be there and people will make you feel you are here, but you do not belong to this part of the world. So it's upon your responsibility, it's upon yourself to condition yourself that I am also a child of the universe. This world belongs to my Father. I belong here. And these people are also my people. So that you don't feel isolated. So that you don't fear. You are as better as anybody else. You are the child of God. And this world belongs to our Father. And even the Indians are your own brothers and sisters. Even if at certain point in time, they will make you feel you don't belong there. So you have a role to play. Recognize yourself. You are on a mission. Your country has expectation on you. Your family has expectation on you. You have your own expectation. And leadership demands that you juggle all these expectations and you emerge as a leader. So my dear brothers and sisters, as I'm concluding, leadership is not a sprint. Leadership is a relay race. Uongozi ni mbio za vijiti. While you are in India, have you discovered what you want to live for? Have you discovered what worthy dying for? What is your big picture? What really do you want to do? After acquiring education, then what? After getting that kind of exposure, then what? These are very difficult questions to answer. It demands really to be sober. And also, like the example Nehru, or the advice Nehru gave to Mwalimu, take what you can get while you are still there. Take what you can get, so that when you come back to Africa, when you come back to Tanzania, you can use that knowledge you have acquired to take Tanzania to the next level, to empower your own community. Perhaps you have not been called to become like a sun to give light to the entire world, but you can be like a candle to give light to few people around you, be it in business or in politics or in arts or in designing, in whatever the case. So you were born at a time such as this to learn the best practices and to come back to fulfill and to bring about the transformation we want to see in our country. My dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much for having me today. It has been a pleasure to join you, and I hope we'll continue to be friends and interact even more. Thank you very much, the leadership of Tanzania's scholars in India, for inviting me, and thank you very much for the Embassy of Tanzania in India for your support and for your collaboration. I wish you the very best. God bless you, good people. I give back to Mr. Tweve. Thank you very much for having me today. God bless you, good people.
Thank you, Mr. Joram. Mr. Ben is joining us again. I had nothing to say. It has been a lecture, and we have been back to class, and I think we